Learning Linux can feel overwhelming at first. You open the terminal, type your first command, and suddenly you're staring at a blinking cursor, wondering what you just stepped into. Unlike other operating systems that try to hide complexity behind polished graphical interfaces, Linux doesn't shy away from exposing how things actually work. That's exactly why it's so powerful. The key to learning Linux faster isn't memorizing hundreds of commands. It's building the right mindset, following the right approach, and focusing on practical experience instead of theory overload. The first major shift you need to make is understanding that Linux is not just another operating system. It's an ecosystem. It's a philosophy built around openness, modularity, and control. When you approach Linux like you approached Windows or macOS, expecting everything to behave the same way, frustration grows quickly. But when you treat Linux as a skill like learning a language or learning to code, progress accelerates dramatically. The fastest learners don't try to master everything at once. They focus on fundamentals and build momentum through daily practice. Linux is deeply logical. Once you understand the patterns behind file systems, permissions, processes, and package management, the rest becomes much easier. So the real secret isn't speed typing commands, it's pattern recognition. One of the most proven ways to learn Linux faster is immersion. That means using it daily, not occasionally. If you install Linux in a virtual machine but only open it once a week, progress will be slow. But if you switch your primary workflow to Linux, even partially, you force your brain to adapt. Daily exposure builds familiarity. Familiarity builds confidence. Many beginners waste time watching endless tutorials without actually practicing. Passive learning feels productive, but it doesn't build skill. The brain learns Linux by doing. Open the terminal, break things, fix them, install software, remove it, edit configuration files, create users, change permissions. Mistakes you make will teach you more than any polished video. Another key factor is focusing on the command line early. It might seem intimidating, but it's the core of Linux power. The graphical interface is helpful, but the terminal is where speed and efficiency truly develop. When you understand basic commands like navigating directories, managing files, viewing logs, and installing packages, you unlock control. You don't need to memorize every command. Instead, learn how commands are structured. Most Linux commands follow predictable patterns. They have flags, they have arguments, they have manual pages. When you get comfortable reading documentation using built-in help systems, you stop relying on step-by-step guides and start becoming independent. Consistency matters more than intensity. Spending 30 minutes every day practicing Linux is more effective than cramming 5 hours once a week. Your brain retains information better with spaced repetition. Even small daily challenges compound over time. One powerful technique is setting micro-goals. Instead of saying, "I want to master Linux," say, "Today I will learn file permissions." Tomorrow, focus on processes. The next day, networking basics. Small wins create motivation. This motivation fuels momentum. Another proven strategy is project-based learning. Don't just learn commands randomly. Build something. Set up a web server. Host a simple website locally. Configure SSH access. Create a backup script. When you build real systems, commands gain context. Context makes knowledge stick. Virtual machines are excellent learning tools. They let you experiment without fear. If you break something, you can revert to a snapshot. This removes anxiety, which often slows beginners down. When fear disappears, curiosity increases. But beyond virtual machines, many learners accelerate their growth by using Linux as their main operating system. It forces adaptation. You encounter real-world problems, and solving them builds competence rapidly. Printing issues, driver configurations, display settings, software installations all become learning opportunities. Another overlooked tip is understanding how the Linux file system works. Once you grasp the hierarchy, what lives in root, what belongs in home directories, where system binaries are stored, the operating system starts making sense. It stops feeling random. Reading error messages carefully is another accelerator. Beginners often panic when they see errors. Experienced users read them like clues. Linux error messages are often surprisingly descriptive. Instead of copying and pasting them blindly into search engines, try to interpret them first. This builds analytical thinking. Documentation is your best friend. Linux systems come with built-in manual pages. Learning how to read them may feel boring at first, but it transforms you into a self-sufficient user. The fastest learners aren't the ones who memorize the most commands. They're the ones who know how to find answers quickly. Community engagement speeds learning dramatically. Linux has one of the most active communities in technology. Forums, discussion boards, chat groups, and open-source projects provide support and insight. Asking thoughtful questions and reading others' troubleshooting experiences exposes you to real-world scenarios. Another acceleration method is teaching what you learn. Explaining file permissions to a friend or writing a short guide forces you to clarify your understanding. Teaching exposes gaps in your knowledge. When you fill those gaps, mastery deepens. Repetition builds muscle memory. Commands that feel complex today will feel natural after repeated use. At first, you might need to look up syntax constantly. Over time, your fingers will type commands automatically. That's when speed increases dramatically. Understanding Linux permissions is a turning point for many learners. Once you grasp how user, group, and others interact with read, write, and execute permissions, system behavior becomes logical instead of mysterious. It also introduces you to security fundamentals. Networking basics are another important area, Learning how Linux handles IP addresses, ports, services, and firewalls opens doors to server management and cybersecurity. Even simple tasks like checking open ports or testing connectivity teach valuable concepts. Automation is where Linux shines. Writing simple shell scripts to automate repetitive tasks builds confidence. It shows you that Linux isn't just a static system, it's programmable. Even small scripts that rename files or schedule backups can dramatically improve understanding. Many beginners underestimate the importance of package management. Installing, updating, and removing software through package managers is fundamental. Once you understand repositories and dependencies, software management becomes smooth and predictable. Time management also affects learning speed. Eliminate distractions when practicing. Focus deeply for short bursts. Deep focus accelerates comprehension far more than multitasking. Another key is embracing problem solving rather than seeking immediate answers. When something breaks, resist the urge to reinstall everything. Troubleshoot step by step. Investigate logs. Check configurations. Each troubleshooting session strengthens diagnostic skills. Version control systems are worth exploring early. Even basic familiarity with tools that track changes teaches you structured thinking. It also connects you to collaborative development workflows common in Linux environments. Understanding processes and system monitoring tools builds awareness of how Linux operates behind the scenes. Watching running processes and analyzing resource usage reveals how software interacts with hardware. Security awareness should develop alongside technical skills. Learn how to create non-root users. Understand why running everything as administrator is risky. Practice using elevated privileges responsibly. Another mindset shift is accepting that you will never know everything about Linux. It's too vast. The goal isn't total knowledge, it's adaptability. When you stop aiming for perfection and start aiming for progress, learning becomes enjoyable. Gamifying your learning can help. Challenge yourself to complete small tasks faster each week. Try solving the same problem using different methods. Explore alternative commands. Real-world exposure accelerates mastery. If possible, volunteer to manage a small server. Host a local file sharing service. Deploy a simple cloud instance. Practical responsibility pushes growth. Patience is critical. Frustration is normal. Even experienced users encounter confusing errors. The difference is persistence. Each obstacle overcome strengthens competence. Another effective method is comparing Linux concepts to systems you already know. Analogies help bridge gaps. Understanding similarities and differences speeds comprehension. Time spent exploring configuration files deepens understanding of how software behaves. Many Linux applications rely heavily on text-based configuration. Editing them manually builds insight. Tracking your progress motivates you. Keep a journal of commands learned, projects completed, and problems solved. Reviewing it later shows how far you've come. Avoid distro hopping excessively. Switching distributions constantly can slow progress because fundamentals remain the same. Focus on mastering core concepts first. Learning keyboard shortcuts and efficient navigation saves time. Efficiency compounds. The less time you spend clicking, the more time you spend understanding. Experiment with breaking and restoring systems in controlled environments. Recovery practice builds confidence. Knowing how to repair issues reduces fear of experimentation. Observe experienced users. Watch how they navigate the terminal. Notice patterns in their command structure. Emulate efficiency. Another major accelerator is consistency in environment. Customize your shell prompt and editor early. Familiarity reduces cognitive load. Understand logs. Logs are stories of system activity. Reading them reveals patterns and behaviors invisible in graphical interfaces. Use spaced repetition for command recall. Revisiting commands periodically strengthens retention. Recognize that confusion is part of growth. Each confusing moment signals that your brain is stretching. Build a habit of curiosity. Instead of asking, "How do I do this?" ask, "Why does this work?" The second question deepens understanding. Engage with open-source projects even at a small level. Reporting issues or contributing documentation connects you to the ecosystem. Explore system startup processes. Understanding how Linux boots adds clarity to how services load. Time invested in understanding permissions, networking, processes, and scripting yields exponential returns later. Avoid comparing your progress to others. Focus on your trajectory. Celebrate milestones. First successful script. First server deployment. First troubleshooting victory. Maintain balance. Overloading yourself leads to burnout. Learning Linux faster isn't about rushing. It's about intentional practice. Structured exposure, curiosity, persistence. Over time, the terminal stops feeling intimidating. It feels empowering. The operating system that once seemed complex becomes logical. In one day, without realizing it, you'll open a fresh Linux installation and feel completely at home. That's when you know you've learned not just commands, but the mindset behind Linux.